Hey everyone, welcome to Countered, where we look at popular or problematic champions and discuss ways to deal with them. My name is Shakrez, and today we look at Darius in the top lane. Darius is one of the most popular top laners in ranked matches, especially in lower brackets. He's a strong laning juggernaut that can absolutely decimate opponents while being quite durable. So what makes him a strong pick? Darius is incredibly dominant in lane, particularly against other melee matchups. His base damages are high, and he deals true damage, meaning he's a lane bully from the get-go. Building items such as Black Cleaver or Trinity Force allow him to gain extra movement speed in order to go for trades and close the gap, making him incredibly scary. Once ahead, he'll just be able to duel you over and over again, and if your teammates aren't careful, he can probably turn around ganks and win 1v2s as well as hitting his Decimate allows him to heal back up 12% of his missing health per champion hit, up to 36%. Finally, Apprehend and Crippling Strike allow Darius to bring his enemies closer to him and then slow them as they run. Not only is Apprehend a very important tool for ranged matchups, it also allows him to set up ganks for his jungler. Darius is much weaker against ranged matchups. Without an innate dash, he only really has Apprehend to catch ranged characters into his melee grasp, and if he misses it, it's a very long cooldown until he can try to go for a trade once more, especially early on. This opens up a long window of time where ranged champions can harass him, and there's not much Darius can do in return. He's also very susceptible to ganks. Most Darius players play the lane quite aggressively, looking for good trades or kills, and without a dash, he only really has flash to escape. If he's overextended in the lane, a jungler can easily come in and shut him down, especially early on before he builds tank stats. Finally, he's very dependent on his team to be able to teamfight. He can't be the main engage as he'll just be kited. Instead, he only works well in teamfights if his team is the one being engaged on, or if his team already has strong pickoff or engage elements for him to follow up on. The best way to nullify Darius' early game is with superior ranged matchups and or early jungle pressure. His lack of effective range means he's incredibly vulnerable in ranged matchups and can be kited and harassed from afar. As for ganking, Darius is incredibly easy to gank, and especially in melee matchups, he will often extend to try to go for good trades or kills. If you're laning against Darius and in a melee matchup, let him push into you to open space for a gank from your jungler. Apprehend also has a very high cooldown, especially early on with no ranks or cooldown reduction, so he's very easy to harass and win trades as a ranged champion if his Apprehend is not available. In skirmishes and teamfights, the best way to stop him from massacring your team is to obviously keep him at a distance. He can't really engage on his own unless you let him just walk up, so slows, stuns, or knockbacks are good options to keep him away from you. The big point to watch out for in fights is his Q, especially after his Noxian Might passive is activated, as a simple spell can proc 5 stacks of Hemorrhage on multiple enemies. Now that we have gone over Darius' strengths, weaknesses, and how to abuse those weaknesses, we can look at some good matchups you can use to pick up against him right from Champion Select. First off is Kayle, and she's probably the most complete counter for Darius. She has a targeted slow to impair him, and a heal that also increases her movement speed, meaning it's also easy for her to kite or gain extra distance from him. Finally, she has an ultimate that completely counters Darius' own ultimate. This combination of factors makes her a good counter both in and outside of lane. In lane, the two most important things to look out for are Darius' Apprehend and your own Righteous Fury cooldown. Darius' Apprehend is slightly more range than Kayle's Righteous Fury, meaning he can pull you while you're attacking from range, so it's important to be able to recognize when he's going to try to pull you and try to bait out the cooldown. Look closely for situations when he last hits a creep and starts moving towards you. It's likely when he'll try to pull you. If you have successfully dodged his ability, you can start going ham on him. Multiple basic attacks with a Fervor Keystone will do a ton of mixed damage. If you get pulled by Darius, try to get out of his range by slowing him with Q and casting W to get out. If you get pulled too many times, you'll be forced to use too many spells and run out of mana. Remember that early on, before you get cooldown reduction, your Righteous Fury will have about 6 seconds of downtime, so pay attention to make sure it doesn't end and you'll start walking up to Darius without your E active. In this matchup, it's very important to try to have more movement speed than Darius for as long as possible. He's eventually going to have a Phage item that will increase his mobility. Rushing Berserker's Greaves can give you a big kiting advantage from early on, as you'll be more mobile. Finally, in teamfights and skirmishes, look to nullify his ultimate and potential reset by ulting the target he's going for. Next up is Kennen, and he's yet another lane that you can run against Darius, and he's probably easier to play in lane than Kayle, despite not being such a complete counter outside of laning. His auto attack range matches Apprehends, meaning he can still get grabbed, but for the most part it should be easy for him to avoid while putting out damage from his auto attacks. That said, a lot of Kennen's damage also comes from his abilities. Both Thundering Shuriken and Electrical Surge have much higher ranges than Darius' effective range, meaning it's very easy for Kennen to harass from afar. If he ever gets caught, Electrical Surge is usually enough to escape, and if it hits Darius, he can then hit his two other skills to stun him, preventing any chases. His stun is also a key component in this matchup. Not only does it allow him to run, it also makes Kennen strong at setting up gank situations for his jungler. The other huge advantage for Kennen is that he's an energy champion, so he won't have any problems with spamming his skills for harassing or escaping. Finally, his itemization is versatile and strong against Darius. Zhonya's Hourglass is a core item for Kennen that will also give him a good active and strong stats to defend himself from Darius. Rylai's will allow him to kite Darius with ease, and even Protobelt will allow him to escape Darius' grasp. When it comes to teamfighting, Kennen can easily outperform Darius given his kit and his AoE ultimate. Last but not least is Jace, and he recently got buffed. He's showing up more and more in ranked matches. He also happens to be a pretty solid pick into Darius. Similarly to Kayle, his range is also lower than Apprehend, so you need to be careful to not get pulled. That said, if he does pull you, you can simply transform into Hammer form and knock him away from you with Thundering Blow. The rest of the lane is pretty simple for Jace, as he can poke from afar with Shock Blast and basic attacks, and if Darius is low, he can go melee and all-in him with Surprising Bursts. Apart from matchups, there are also other things to have in mind to shut down Darius and stop him. In lane, movement speed is key. Try to get to your 2 boots early on if possible to make sure he can't reach you in ranged matchups. If you're playing a melee bruiser, armor items are probably necessary early on. It's worth mentioning that the hilt of his blade will not proc his bleed passive or heal him, so if you're playing a melee champion, try to hug Darius as he casts the spell to ensure he doesn't get the heal off. Without his heal, his dueling potential or probability of surviving a gank are much lower. That's going to be all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Countered, and I'll see you guys next week.